and we will now move into the second session. As many of you know, this represents the first high-level dialogue in North America. And so the next session is on the Air Center. It will be moderated by my colleague, Jerry Miller, who is the founder and president for Science for Decisions. Jerry.
Thank you, Greg. Good morning and good afternoon, or even good night, depending on where you are around the world. I am Jerry Miller, and I'm very pleased to welcome, to add my welcome to attendees from all around the world. Over the last several years, I've watched the Atlantic International Research Center grow from a nascent concept to the substantial entity that it is today. So this morning, I have the distinct pleasure of bringing you a short session focused on the Air Center, its mission, vision, status, and some of its scientific objectives. Our first speaker is Miguel Belló. Miguel is Chief Executive Officer of the Air Center, a role which he took on early this year. Previously, he was Managing Director of Deimos Space, which pursues entrepreneurial technological advancements in the space arena, and he brings more than 30 years of experience in the space industry. He now applies those skills across the spectrum of Air Center activities. So Miguel, the microphone is yours.
Thank you very much, Jerry. Good morning, America, good afternoon, Europe and Africa, and good evening in Asia. I would like to introduce the Air Center. I would like to present the mission and vision, the current status of the network, research infrastructure, what has been the project we have been involved in the past, and which are going to be our future flagship projects, the Atlantic Pole-to-Pole Observation System of Systems, and the Atlantic Constellation of Small Satellites. We would like also to address our scholarship program and the events on the network. The Air Center is an international, distributed and collaborative network institution, which fosters job creation and knowledge-driven economy in the Atlantic region. It is based on scientific excellence to monitor and contribute to reach the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. It integrates space, earth, ocean science, promoting South-North and North-South cooperation. Air Center is based on main thematic missions. They will be presented in detail later on by Stewart, who is the Chief Scientific Officer of the Air Center. The Air Center is the result of a long science diplomacy effort. It all started in New York in 2016 in the first Atlantic Interaction Conference. Then a sequence of high-level dialogue meetings were held, the first one in April 2017. In July 2017, it led to the Belém Statement with the signature of agreement between the European Union, Brazil, and South Africa. Then subsequent high-level dialogue meeting was held in November 2017 in Florianopolis, and that led to the creation of the Constitution of the Air Center in April 2018. After that, 3 new high-level dialogues were held in Praia, Canary Island, and Lagos, leading to its corresponding declaration. Then we end today, October, in the 6th high-level dialogue in Philadelphia, introduced by Greg this morning, with collaboration with Penn State and ACID, lead to the Philadelphia Declaration. Our network is growing. We have more and more countries on the Air Center network. In Africa, we have strong links, and South Africa, Angola, Namibia, Nigeria, Ghana, Cape Verde, Sao Tome, and we are discussing with Morocco to be new member. Portugal, Spain, UK, Norway, and we are also discussing with Sweden and other countries. In America, we have a strong partnership in Brazil with a big presence. We recently signed in Colombia 2 important agreements for the beginning of the integration of Colombia in our network. And we're very proud to say that we also signed with Mexico a memorandum of understanding with the Mexican Space Agency. In fact, the President, Mr. Salvador Landeros, will be a speaker today. And in the States, we hold important partnerships with MIT, with Penn State, in Florida University, and UT Austin University. This is the current status of the network. We have offices all around the Atlantic in nearly all countries. The headquarters is in Azores Island, is in Terceira, and we have also offices in the Ministry of Science and Technology in Lisbon. In that time, we already started deploying some research infrastructure. The first thing was to deploy our headquarters. It is based, as I said, in Terceira, in Terinov, this technological park. We are today nearly 20 staff, and we host there an Earth observation laboratory, which includes an ESA lab. ESA lab is done thanks to an agreement with the European Space Agency, and the objective is to develop Earth observation application for Atlantic needs. We already started working heavily in different applications for the Atlantic from our ESA lab. We are also very proud to have a node of the GeoBur Planet thematic and regional, and especially the MBON Secretariat. MBON is the Marine Biodiversity Observation Network. We host at the Earth Center the Secretariat managed by Eliso Codato and Joana Soares. In fact, MBON is a co-organizer of this event, of this 6th high-level dialogue. In addition, we host infrastructure for geodesy, which form part of the Atlantic network of geodesy and spatial station, thanks to the collaboration with the regional government of Azores. This is very long-based interferometry systems for geodesy on the Atlantic. This is regarding infrastructure. Regarding projects, we already have presented in the last year 67 proposals for international competitive calls. We have been awarded with 20 projects so far. That means more than 30 million funded for all the network that was teaming with us for those projects. If we translate this to jobs, this is the creation of more than 100 new high-skilled jobs in the last 3 years. I have to stress that the creation of high-skilled jobs is also one objective of the Earth Center, apart from application which solve problems on the Atlantic. What are we doing in those projects? Those projects are different topics. We have, for instance, E5DES, which is desalination in the island of the Macaronesia using renewable energy. We have a project FPA CAP, which is for the dissemination and promote the use of Copernicus to solve problems on the Atlantic. We have a nice project also to detect marine litter, especially plastics, with hyperspectral data. The project SAILS, which is a project to study space, atmosphere, ocean interaction with instruments on board of the Sagres vessel. Sagres is a vessel of the Portuguese Navy, which is doing the 500th anniversary of the circumnavigation trip of Magallanes and Elcano. But we have also two important projects of the Horizon 2020 European Union, which is the Mission Atlantic for analysis of ecosystem, and Astral, which deal with the optimization of aquaculture. I mean, the teaming with the European Union is for us also very important, and we're very proud to have CG Group representation later on today. We also have CO2 costs for observation of ocean climate, biochemistry, and relevant ecological indicators. Another projects to set up our own satellite receiving station to get real-time data for direct broadcast satellites. We have been also awarded with Ports of Future, which is an European Space Agency competition for the environmental monitoring and moving towards zero pollution ports. Also, European Space Agency is one of our most important partnerships. In addition, we have two projects, Magal and Aeros, for the development of a constellation of satellites for the Atlantic. Magal in collaboration with UT Texas in Austin, and Aeros with MIT. Project for the renewable offshore wind energy. Another competitive project we were awarded was to the customization of Earth observation-based information for the Atlantic cities and ports. This is in the frame of the European Space Agency. Regarding also Azores regional calls, we have been awarded with INTERSECT for the internationalization. And there was a project we are running the last month, which is an observatory of continuous analysis of air and water quality by satellites during all this COVID-19 pandemic. Well, those are the projects we are running so far, but what is our future projects? We have flagship projects for the future, which are oriented toward the solution of Atlantic needs. There are many needs around the Atlantic. We have to work on coastal erosion, bay and estuarine area protection, fish stock management, optimization of aquaculture, detection of ocean pollution, plastic, oil spills, climate change monitoring, sea ice, disaster monitoring, floods, tsunamis, biodiversity, water quality port. All those needs require a very sophisticated framework. It is not possible to do it with a single science, with a single discipline. We need a holistic approach encompassing space, ocean, atmosphere, climate, and data science. For that, our target is to define what we call framework, a system of systems, because a single system is not able to provide the data that we will need. We call this framework Atlantic Pole-to-Pole Observation System of Systems, or APOS. Pole-to-pole because there is no boundaries in the Atlantic. All phenomena, currents are global. We cannot isolate regional or local phenomena. All is affected. Then we have to go Arctic to Antarctic. A system of systems, as I said, because it means the fusion of data from many systems. This is the architecture that we envisage for our APOS system. The architecture has 7 main components. There are 4 sensor components. We are planning a space component based on satellites, an atmospheric component with drones, but also high altitude platform, which are very promising for ocean data. Also, sea surface component with drifters, buoys, automatic vessels, and obviously underwater component with CTDs, gliders, automatic underwater vehicles. We need sensors from the deep ocean up to the outer space. All this managed in a ground control center where we can make this data fusion. All is collected in a data component, which is an archive using big data technologies and a catalog, making this available for our partners. Our partners and stakeholders are research institutions, governments, even private companies, leading to the most important component, the user service component. This data has to be translated into information for policymakers or given solutions to the needs, in particular by using algorithm, mathematical model, artificial intelligence, ocean, space, and atmospheric science to provide solutions to fisheries, to coastal erosion, or to biodiversity. If we focus on the space component, the space component is quite important because space data is the only one which provides synoptic measurements for the very large field of view. We are using already satellites from our partners. We're using the Sentinels Copernicus from Europe, from the European Union and ESA. We're using the US NOAA, NASA, and USGS satellites, but also satellites of our partner countries, Brazil, Nigeria, Spain. They all have interesting satellites. We will use it. I mean, this APOS is not everything new. The idea is to federate existing assets. There is already a lot of existing assets that we want to federate to be able to be used globally. But we have detected in this area a gap, is that there are sophisticated data, but we have a gap of very frequent data. Some of the ocean phenomena are phenomena will last only a few hours, and you need very repetitive measurements. For this, we'll need a new constellation of small satellites. We call it Atlantic Constellation, and this is one of our future flagship projects. We did an initial analysis, and the idea would be to use 16 satellites, 4 orbital planes with 4 satellites each, which are able to provide imagery and science and important data to be able to deal with all the needs that we previously listed. This is the 3D view of the constellation, which is one of the future flagship projects of the Earth Center to be done in international collaboration. Our goal is the collaboration of the countries around the Earth Center. Well, project is important for us. We are delivering, we have to deliver, but it's not only that. We also believe that cross-fertilization of students will help to have links across the Atlantic. For this, we open a very ambitious scholarship program. This program holds 60 PhD scholarships to be done in collaboration between Portuguese and international universities all around the Earth Center countries. All these, the first 13 scholarships has been already issued this year, and we go up to 60 in the next years. Furthermore, we need to keep the network connected. We need to create events so that we are all the network very well linked. And we started this year very active we have a workshop in Rio in February where we presented the outcome of the SAIL project with the atmospheric space-ocean interaction. This is the picture corresponding to the Rio de Janeiro meeting. We did, beginning of March, an important workshop in the Geographic Institute of Lisbon dealing with natural hazard and the effect of natural hazard and the possible mitigation. But unfortunately, in March, we suffered the confinement due to the pandemic. Then we had to reinvent our way of keeping the network connected. And then Mr. José Moutinho, which is the head of the network, invented the network in 5 days, which is it's a very good method to keep all of us connected. There are weekly sessions with relevant speakers. We have ministers, very relevant speaker in each domain, that we used to have hundreds of participants from over 70 countries and all continents. Has been very successful. And also particular roundtables. We had a special season of relevant topics like the COVID-19 impact on blue economy with Claire Jolie, or the ocean in the solar system with NASA representative, or even live underwater with Fabian Cousteau and other technical. I mean, all those roundtables were also very successful, helping our community to be linked and to keep in contact. In addition, we co-organize other important events. We co-organized a couple of weeks ago the second Forum of Environment and Blue Economy in Bahia in Brazil, and we envisage to co-organize in the next weeks the Linking Green and Blue Amazonias event, which will be also the inauguration of the Air Center new office in Belém for the Amazonia area. As conclusion, the Air Center has been consolidated as an important international network for technical and scientific collaboration. We have already deployed the first infrastructure, like the Earth Observation Laboratory with the ESA lab, the Secretariat of the MBON for Biodiversity, the Node of GeoBON, and the RAEGE for Geodesy in collaboration with the Azores regional government. We have set up the first proposals for international competitive calls, leading to 20 projects in international collaboration. We also have defined our long-term vision that we call Atlantic Pole-to-Pole Observation System of Systems, APOS. And one of the most important flagship projects within this long-term vision is Atlantic Constellation. It's one of the most important projects that we want to develop in the next 2 years. In addition, an ambitious scholarship program has been designed for 60 PhD in international collaboration, and a very active virtual events program to help the network to be connected during the pandemic. Well, the organization of this event virtual prevent the very important face-to-face meeting that we would like to have in Philadelphia. A way to mitigate this is that we are planning an in-person meeting to be held in Washington next year after the COVID situation is sufficiently improved, to have this face-to-face meeting in the US that unfortunately we have to do only virtual for this stage. Well, thank you very much for your attention. This is a quick view of what the Air Center has been done in the last year. Thank you very much.
And thank you so much, Miguel, for those interesting remarks summarizing the status and mission and vision of the Air Center. We appreciate them very much. Now we are going to turn to Stewart Bernard. Stewart recently became chief scientist of the South African National Space Agency, SANSA, and was previously a senior researcher at the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research in Cape Town, where he contributed to a wide array of ocean-focused international research activities. He has also served as Chief Science Officer of the Air Center, so is superbly qualified to talk about its scientific activities. So Stewart, the microphone is yours.
So good afternoon to you from Cape Town in South Africa. What I'm going to do after Miguel's excellent introduction is try and dive a little deeper into some of the thinking and the philosophy behind the Air Center and its science missions in particular. So what we have here is actually an extract from the Philadelphia Declaration, which is being signed today. And I would like us to focus on what I think of as the Air Center's unique ability to extend the value chain. And if we look at the words here, unique, multidimensional perspective, combining a mission-oriented, demand-driven and problem-solving approach, which embraces diversity and incorporates different types of key stakeholders. So to my mind, this is a key aspect that the Air Center allows both a bottom-up and a top-down approach. It has a very strong focus on new communities, distributed ownership, and expanding the ability to reach these new communities with science, and particularly Earth observation-driven science. So Miguel has already taken us through the structure of the network, but let's just look at this network for a little bit and see, just how extensive it is around the Atlantic, but also how diverse it is, both from a cultural perspective and from an economic perspective. And this is, to my mind, a great strength of the network in that it brings a great diversity of thinking to try and solve some of the societal problems that we are looking at. It allows us to pool resources to look at large complex problems. It increases the robustness. In many ways, it diversifies the risk. A favorite phrase of our ex-Minister of Science, Naledi Pandor, was leave no one behind. And it also allows us through the network to amplify the results and benefit from this diversity of thinking, as I've said. The bottom up and top down is extremely important. And you can see here a kind of classic user and stakeholder needs driven process to realize products and services as we go through this drive here. And the fact that we can do this, and I'll show examples of this user needs gathering later, the fact that we can combine this with more policy-driven aspects from a top-down is extremely powerful, as I hope you'll see. So the first thing I have to do with this slide is beg the forgiveness of some of our thought leaders in this domain, like Mariano Mazzucato, Petra Kunkel, some of the OECD and World Bank authors, etc. But in our thinking about how to really try and realize downstream socioeconomic value, we looked at a lot of these documents, and I'd just like to spend a few minutes on this one. So the first key thing to realize is that it's a human-driven spiral development. So to use knowledge-based solutions to realize socioeconomic benefit, it actually looks much more like software development in many ways than hardware development. And some of the key things that you need to realize this, if we start at the top here, we need compelling narratives. This is extremely important. We need what-ifs that people can relate to. This is a key part of human agency, is actually being spoken to in a way that you can empathize with. And we need that to show, to demonstrate what is already being achieved, but also to look at where we're going in an inspirational and aspirational perspective. Going on from there, we need to realize the direction we're going in. And if you go look at thought leaders like Mariano Mazzucato, she'll really clearly say that you need to look at the direction you're going in as well. And this allows us to look at regional driven priorities to see where, in many ways, the economic sweet spots are, and to put into place a realistic ability to realize value based upon an economic delta, effectively. We need enabling structures that basically grow communities. So, for example, the Copernicus program in Europe is perhaps a very good example of Earth observation that comes with a lot of downstream incentivizing and results in multiple solutions. It's not business as usual. We need to be cross-disciplinary, cross-sectoral. We need both radical and incremental innovation. And we have to look at market creation and new sources of value and growth. And this public-private aspect, I think, is very much a factor in new space. And Air Center, I'm hoping, is on the edge of this, trying to develop these symbiotic ecosystems, or what we might call, innovation ecosystems. And the public-private aspect, obviously it increases the diversity of the actors, but it allows you to bring in new investment, it allows you to share risk and reward, and it probably creates the greatest spillover benefits. You can't grow what you can't measure. So if you're looking for downstream value growth, you have to be able to measure this. And ideally, you've got to look at, if we take, for example, a CubeSat constellation, we need to look at the upstream, the midstream, and the downstream benefits, and to be able to measure them. The collective intelligence, this is extremely important. We have both regional clusters and regional priorities, but we're looking at them together and using these open innovation frameworks. It allows us to look at new ecosystems and to look at new ways of getting to shared value creation. And then finally, you have the policy aspects. So again, you have policies from across the network, but hopefully you also have multilateral policies. And ideally, these should be things that look at the co-development of both public services and new ecosystems and markets. So looking at the private sector as well. Okay, and this brings us to the missions, which we've already heard several times. This is also in the Philadelphia Declaration. So these are clean and productive coasts and bays, resilience to coastal natural hazards, sustainable food production, primarily through fisheries and aquaculture, improved resource management and governance of ocean and marine systems, and improved environmental and maritime monitoring. And if we go and look at a schematic of this with the missions on the left-hand side here, we can also look at what we can call enablers across the top here. And I would encourage you to look at this and go a bit further downstream in terms of knowledge as we move across this. So in terms of Earth observation, we obviously, as Miguel said very clearly, there are a lot of existing missions in orbit. The NASA and the NOAA missions, the Copernicus missions, missions from a wide variety of other sectors, that we already have strong decision support tools across this variety of sectors built. So for example, in South Africa, we have both government-oriented information systems that might look at, for example, vessel tracking for maritime domain awareness, and we have fisheries and aquaculture support systems. Through GMES in Africa, we have the same thing through regional Southern Africa. And of course, there are many more powerful analogs in the developed world. So the CubeSats add a great deal of innovation in terms of both time and space, as you could see from Miguel's slides, and we hope the quality of information, if, for example, you went into a hyperspectral mission, which is our hope. We then add the ability to look into the future, both through coupled ecosystem models and AI. You have the ability, the need to start looking at what the economic deltas are and how that allows you to look in a much more informed way at sustainable development. And MSP here is marine spatial planning. So that allows you to bring it in a quantitative and systematic way, all of the sectors and the enablers into a kind of government and private sector decision-making frame. Okay, so let's just quickly go and look at a few examples. I put this in because this was actually from, I think, 2 years ago in the Canary Islands and the output. And you can see it has the beginnings of where we're going here with the idea of pulling together all of these things into marine products and services with a back end of the observation technology and big data and the compute aspects. And it's talking both to Earth systems science and to the blue economy. And a couple of examples that I like very much, because coming from an Earth observation background, the thing that has the most value are well quantified user needs. So this is an example of some of the air center meetings in the Eastern Atlantic. And of course, the thing you want to do is come in with a particular methodology to gather your user needs in a quantitative way. So this is just a very brief example of how you look at user archetypes and how you move downstream from there. And here's just a few brief examples of, in Cabo Verde, researchers saying that the thing that they're lacking is bathymetry data. Now in the developed world, the idea of lacking moderate resolution bathymetry data is probably, that's not something we suffer from very often. But that was a very interesting one. Fishermen obviously wanting better information about when to go to sea and where to fish. Similarly for here in Sao Tome and Principe, bathymetry and models, in other words, more information about the ocean and what it's doing, policymakers wanting integrated products. In the Azores, resource managers wishing to know about biodiversity hotspots so they can look at resource management and food security, and then researchers wishing to know about the effects on conservation of development. In Angola, the idea of capacity building and infrastructure, and then as a policymaker looking at monitoring land use to provide for sustainable ecosystem services. Miguel briefly mentioned this. This is one of the ESA projects looking at plastic pollution and new hyperspectral ways of potentially detecting plastics. We know this is a huge global issue and one that's captivated the Earth observation community to quite a large degree. And then finally, this is a project of Luis Landau and Luis Paulo Assad from the Federal University of Rio. And the reason I like this is not only what it does, but of course, the stakeholders in this are exactly where we wish to be going as the Air Center, a combination of private sector research and government driving the ability to really look at high resolution observations leading to improved high resolution models off the Brazilian coast in this Projeto Azul. But if we look at this from a scaling perspective, the amplification perspective, we can see that the aim is to, we already know, for example, that there are global models like NEMO, like Mercator is probably the most common one that we use anyway. But it doesn't provide the sub-mesoscale resolution that's really needed for the very high value coastal zone. So the idea of moving to a downscaling and an upscaling capability across the network for these coupled hydrodynamic models is a very, very powerful idea. And then the last example is sadly one of the ones that the COVID-19 managed to interrupt quite seriously. I think the vessel was actually on its way to Cape Town, the Sagres, the Portuguese Navy's tall ship training vessel, and it was on a global tour to replicate the circumnavigation of Magellan, and that one was interrupted, but that was an excellent outreach. And thank you very much, and I will leave it there. Back to you, Terry, please.
Well, thank you, Stewart, and thank you, Miguel, as well. I'm really struck by what both of you said about the need for science-based information to inform management and policy decisions throughout the North and South Atlantic. And that actually is a perfect lead-in to our next session. So I will toss the microphone back to our MC, Greg, to get our next session started. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Jerry, Stewart, and Miguel.